I am in Europe, Spain, in a town called Madrid. The streets are empty, the airports are empty, but people are full of hope and love and empathy. I'm in Madrid.
So welcome everybody as you come in. We have people from all over, I guess mainly from the eastern part of the United States, but from all over. I'm Dave Waits, and I'm here with Michael Brenner and Pia Sorensen. Pia and Michael, you want to just say hello?
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
And this is our science and cooking lecture. It's sponsored by Gastronomy Solutions, 1933, Escada, Mercek, Shimadzu, Brad and Taylor. I can't read the other one, I'm sorry. But welcome everybody. And yeah, maybe we could go to the next slide. Today is a very special lecture. Yeah, maybe you can just say a word about what we're celebrating.
Yeah, so today is a super special day because we have, for many years, we've been working on a book, and tomorrow it will be available in bookstores in the US. And if you're not in the US, you'll have to wait another month or so. So in honor of this, we have a special lecture to celebrate, and we have a very special speaker who has been with us from the very beginning. And so we're glad that you can all be here to celebrate with us. And Dave, do you want to tell us a little bit about the beginning when Jose
Sure.
joined?
So Jose, on the next slide, so Jose has been with us right from the beginning. The next slide shows some pictures. We had Jose and Ferran Adria already 11 years ago, and they joined us to start a class on science and cooking. It's a way of us teaching science through cooking to the undergraduates that we teach here at Harvard. At the same time, we bring wonderful chefs in, like Jose, to give lectures of this sort. The chefs lecture to the students, and they also, we share that with a public lecture. Usually it's done at Harvard, but now with COVID, we're bringing it to everywhere through doing it virtually. And if you look here, you can see that Jose already the very first time he was a lecturer. And on the next slide is some pictures. Jose has been with us right from the start, and he's really one of my absolute favorite lecturers. He's somebody who is an extremely creative chef, but is also a wonderful communicator, and he can teach scientific concepts really as well as anybody I know. And he's always somebody who's been a wonderful colleague and a wonderful co-teacher, and has added enormously to the class. So this is really a science class. On the next slide, we do this all the time. We talk a little bit about science, and this week our topic in the science is heat transfer, and the next pictures show some examples of heat transfer. On the left is steak. As you cook steak, heat is transferred into the steak, and you see that it's cooking more on the outside and it's nice and rare on the inside. On the right is molten chocolate cake or lava cake, one of the signature dishes. Our students did an experiment with that this week. And in the middle is the signature dish for this week. It's fried ice cream. So of course the question is, how can you take ice cream that's absolutely cold and frozen on the inside and fry it so it's hot on the outside? And that has to do with heat transfer. And we teach the students, on the next slide, we teach the students a tradition, an equation of the week. And this is our equation that we use to teach the students. And people, we always have this tradition. We click the forward button, we clap our hands. So please clap, everybody should clap when we put our equation up. I won't go through the equation. We use this in the class, but I won't do it today because I'd rather, I know everybody's really here to hear Jose. And so, Pia, I think you're going to tell us a little bit about the other reason that we have for this lecture.
Yeah, so I just want to say a few words about this book that I mentioned. This is in book form, sort of what we've been doing in this lecture series. It features some of the remarkable recipes we've seen from the visiting chefs to this series. And we do what we do in this class. We delve into the science behind those recipes and behind everyday recipes. And this has really been a huge endeavor to put all this together. And we're very grateful to all the people who have helped along the way, all the chefs who have contributed recipes, and especially to Jose, who was generous to write a foreword with Ferran Adrià, which you see an excerpt of here. And he also contributed a recipe of his famous almond cake from Minibar. So these are all in the book, and you can check them out. So if you are attending this lecture, we have a special exclusive offer, which is given by the Harvard Coop. So if you buy your book through the Harvard Coop, you will get a signed copy. And the link is here, the blue link here on the bottom. And there will also be a link posted in the chat. And if you are one of the first orders, then you receive a recipe card for Sangria Roja from Jaleo by José Andrés. So check this out, and the link should be in the chat. And with this, I hand over to Michael, who will introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Pia. So Dave already talked a little bit about Jose. Jose was with us in this course from the very beginning. And of course, all of you know Jose as an amazing chef and an amazing human being who spends his efforts in various ways to save the world, as he will tell us about later today in the lecture. But what you may not realize about Jose, which we learned very quickly in this class, is that he's a remarkable teacher. So the first year in the class, Jose, I think if I'm remembering correctly, he will correct me if I've got it wrong, he gave 3 lectures. He actually came, he flew up to Harvard, and he gave 3 lectures, and Jose's lectures were often done on the blackboard, sort of explaining with his drawings and his diagrams the ideas that he was telling us about. And I just wanted to recount one story before I turn it over to Jose, which is at some point early on, and Dave and Pia might remember the details, or Jose, we were all giving a lecture together. It was a public lecture. It was actually outside of the series. It was someplace. I actually think it was Atlanta, but I've now forgotten. And we were all standing there with Jose. We were giving a lecture together, and I made a statement. I think I showed a movie of a recipe by Joan Roca in which he had used super cooled water to make this remarkable dessert. And someone in the audience raised their hand and said, "Could you explain supercooling to me?" And I said, "You mean like right now?" Because although I do this professionally, I actually need to practice. It's not so easy. And Jose looked at me and said, "Do you want me to do it?" And I said, "Sure, you do it." And Jose gave this remarkable description. He had a story about, there were people and they were in love with each other, and it was absolutely technically on target with respect to the physics of supercooling. I couldn't have done it any better. And he's really, on top of everything else, a remarkable teacher. And so it's really a pleasure, Jose, to have you here celebrating this book. I think it's entirely appropriate, and I was really honored to be able to introduce you to everyone. So Jose, so let's clap. Is he here? Uh-oh.
I think we may have lost our speaker.
Oh no, that's terrible.
That's not so good.
Well, this was recorded. He'll come back.
He'll come back.
He'll come back. Dave, do you remember the?
I remember it extremely well. It was in Atlanta. I remember, though, not discussing supercooling, but rather discussing surfactants. And some kid asked us, "What's a surfactant?" We looked at each other. How can we describe what a surfactant is? And Jose went up and he described it better than you or I ever could.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
It was just remarkable. And I also remember the students in the Harvard class would always say after Jose came that, you know, we don't understand you guys, but we understand him. It's true. So, but we seem to have lost him for all of this preamble.
So for those of you who are waiting in the audience, Jose just arrived to Spain today, like I think just a few minutes before this lecture. So I think right now we're basically testing out how good the Wi-Fi is in Spain. And maybe it's not so good right in this very location.
Somebody asked a question. Discuss the World Central Kitchen while waiting. That was a question. That's a good question. Unfortunately, we need Jose to discuss the World Central Kitchen. I think he was planning on doing so when he arrives. Jose was singing actually at the beginning when people were coming on. If we had recorded it, we could just play in the background Jose singing while we were waiting for his internet to restore.
Oh, Matthew Chrome is asking, you could tell us more about the book. Yeah, what can we tell you about the book? There are lots of really good recipes. There are recipes from Joanne Chang, Christina Tosi, Wiley Dufresne, Jose, obviously. There are some exercises you can do in your kitchen, just like we do here. There's a question about whether it's available as an ebook, and yes, I believe it is. There are some questions about if we deliver to the Netherlands. So if you are abroad, I know that I do have some notes on this. If you are in general, if you are abroad, it is the best to order from online retailers such as Amazon or other online retailers, or ask your local bookstore to order. If you're in the UK, it comes out November 20th. If you're in Canada, it comes out tomorrow. If you're in Australia, it comes out November 20th. And for all of these, you can check out the local Norton bookstores. So you just search for the Norton bookstore, or the local Amazon or online retailers. And then for those of you who are in Spain and France, there is work going on to do translations into your local language. And those we will let you know of as they happen. Is the book vegetarian friendly is one question. It's a mix. It's a mix of everything. Haute cuisine, everyday food, vegetarian, meat, all kinds of stuff.
I mean, you know, the thing is that the thing about, I happen to be vegetarian, so I'm like, you know, partial to this question, but, you know, all food is basically water, so it's pretty much the same thing. Maybe many of you won't like that comment, but from the point of view of physics, it doesn't matter much. Jose would be horrified. This is why we can say things now while we're waiting for Jose to come back that normally we would be.
There's one question, is the book helpful for teaching science to kids? I would say yes. I think there are all kinds of examples there, from everything from sort of more advanced physics and chemistry, but really the book is for a general audience. It's not a science required kind of book at all. And I think if you're a teacher, you will probably find what we have found, which is that a lot of these examples can be sort of made harder or easier depending on what your student population is. And I think you'll be able to find some inspiration there.
How different is it from the class course?
Yeah, how different is it from the class book for the course? That's a great question. So I think what you're referring to is our very rough course notes, which we self-published, I think 5 years ago. So this book, I would say, is quite different. It is much more polished. It's much more worked on. And it does not have as much emphasis on equations, and it has much more emphasis on the food and the cooking and sort of how the two are married together. Great question.
No, you're amazing. Jose, did you hear our introduction of you?
No, and I am so happy I didn't.
Yeah.
I will be, I don't know all the bad things you will say about me and my nonsense and everything else.
No. So actually what we said maybe in brief is that not only are you an amazing chef and an amazing human being, but you're also an amazing teacher. And on any number of occasions, you demonstrated your ability to teach much better and much more clearly than the rest of us. And so we said it was completely appropriate that you're the one to help launch this book off. And we're really honored that you would do so.
So now you can hear me?
Yeah.
I mean, listen, to all of the 500 people on the call, I mean, I don't know why are you waiting that you are not going already to try to buy it on Amazon? I am in Madrid. I was flying all day today. I arrived 1 hour to this location when I hope I had good Wi-Fi, and I got good Wi-Fi. But this guy by Michael Pia and David, look at the first copy ever to make it to Europe. First copy ever to make it to Europe. And quite frankly, I think by now you know this class only will happen when amazing people like Michael and David, and then joined by amazing people like Pia and the many people that have made this class possible over the years. I realize that all of us, we become better when we are able to move away from our comfort zone. And even I will say that all these amazing professors from Harvard, who now I'm so proud of call friend, when they move away from their comfort zone, which means to teach physics through cooking, are they crazy? Is the people at Harvard even taking them seriously? But then think about the cooks. When the cooks, we move away from our kitchens and visiting the farmers markets, and we come to join the physicists, and we start learning about all the amazing things that happen every time you make a sauce, or every time you are browning meat, and you start learning about Maillard, and you start learning about emulsions and about diffusion, and all of the sudden makes our lives easier. So what I want to celebrate today is that if this class at Harvard happened, is because people like Ferran Adrià, people like the many chefs that they were invited by David and Michael in the early days, everybody decided to move away from their comfort zone. And when you move away from your comfort zone is when life really starts. Today, we're celebrating a book and people that move everybody into a place that we are uncomfortable. That's the place where things happen. So thank you very much for making this happen to all of us, Michael and David.
Thank you, Jose. So,
and tell me, today the class was about heat, right?
Heat transfer.
Heat transfer.
You're right. Tell us about
it. Well, I cannot say anything about it because you know all about it. And you've written an amazing book that tells everything about it and tells everything in a very simple way. Obviously, we got one great scientist that you open your home to him, Harold McGee, that he's been such an amazing friend for cooks like me when he decided to write an amazing book about food and cooking and a science when nobody was thinking about that. And he's the guy that began making many chefs to really see cooking and science as the same thing, and that know-how and knowledge was so important. You know, I know this is purely a class of physics for undergrads, but in this class, I believe we've always been trying to connect cooking, physics, food with the whole world. And when we are talking about heat, we were talking about heat and temperature, and we will talk about calories, and we will talk about diffusion. But I only want to put that message as we continue, and you ask me, Pia, questions or whatever you want me to talk about. But when we talk about heat, when we talk about heat transfer, I want you to think about the people in the world, especially the 3 billion closely women in the world, that they are poor and they are hungry, because actually it's a formula. And I know David and Michael love formulas. And I decided to understand that poverty and hunger is when the energy you put out is more than the energy you bring in. When that happens, you are poor and you are hungry. And heat has a lot to do with that, because people cook with charcoal. People cook with charcoal and wood and fossil fuels that generate huge amounts of energy that helps people of the world cook the energy that feeds the world. So when we think in terms of what's the most important energy in the world, this is not gas, these are not fuels. The most important energy in the world is the food itself that humans consume, and more important, the heat that we need to produce those proteins, those vegetables into edibles that keeps making humanity what it is. I know it's a little bit of philosophical, but at the end of the day, when you guys are taking this class about physics, in a way what you're talking about is how do we keep humanity fed? And that's the underlying powerful message.
So, yeah, maybe you can just change the order slightly. And Jose, I think, you know, all the time I've known you, you've been a great cook, but you're also a great humanist. And so can you tell us a little bit of what you've been doing? The World Central Kitchen has been such a central part of what you do. Can you tell us a bit about what you're doing with that?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to do it quick so we get more questions. And Pia, if I overdo it, you shut me down and ask me a new question. But long story short, many of you knows about World Central Kitchen. You know about World Central Kitchen because for me it was very important. Almost this class of cooking and physics at Harvard almost began at the same time that World Central Kitchen was created, and was created after Haiti earthquake in Port-au-Prince, all the devastation. And then over the years, we've been a group of cooks going many places in America and around the world to feed people after disasters. Specifically this last year, the men and women of World Central Kitchen, we are about to reach 40 million meals. We've been in more than 40 states in the United States alone. We've been feeding hospitals, nurses, doctors, first responders, homeless, elderly. We've done that, keeping everybody safe. We created a health protocol back in February when nobody even was talking about how to keep everybody safe. We developed the first intense, deep safety health protocols to keep all our teams safe. So in America, we have 3,000 restaurants that we activated, where we've been able to do 300,000 meals a day. We went to Japan, Yokohama, when the first cruise ship arrived in February with COVID cases. We went to Auckland to do the same. And since then, we've been everywhere. Navajo Nation, hospitals in New York, Little Rock, Arkansas. In the middle, the men and women of World Central Kitchen, we responded to the explosion in Beirut, where we were doing close to 20,000 meals a day in less than 24 hours, feeding all the first responders and volunteers and the people that lost their homes. We've been in the hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico, in the fires of Oregon, California, now Utah, Colorado. We've been in the hurricanes in Mexico. We've been in the big derecho storm in Iowa, in Des Moines. As you can see, it's been a very interesting year for being a cook. In a moment that was sad because our restaurant industry has suffered, and many restaurants across America and across the world are almost shut down, or their business is less than half of what used to be. I'm very proud that even under all this adversity, the men and women of America that feed America and the men and women that feed the world, we've been active feeding people in need. And that's what we've been doing, Dave.
It's fantastic, as always, Jose. It's always great to hear you and hear about what you do. And maybe you would like to ask a question.
Yeah, I'm interested about something that you said in your foreword, actually, to the book. I'm going to read a little excerpt of it, and then I'm going to ask you to comment on it. So you said that it's important for students to have the opportunity to understand how food is connected with every single part of their lives. Food is science, but food is also history, culture, diplomacy, national security, and much, much more. And it would make our society stronger if we all were better aware of where our food is coming from and its deep impact on the world around us. How do you, Jose, how do you approach it in the classroom, these ideas? And how do you think all of us can apply it in practice in our everyday lives?
Thank you, Pia. Thank you very much, because I've been doing this for so long, I even sometimes forget I said those things. But let me tell you, thanks to Harvard, thanks to Michael, thanks to Dave, by seeing the power of sharing knowledge with the students, with the people of Cambridge and the people of Boston that came to the classes when we opened them to the public. I saw the power of a university as a place to spread ideas to change the world for the better, where everybody respect each other and where true knowledge wins the day. And for me, it was very easy to understand that if we were going to fight hunger and poverty in the world, we have to understand that the problem we are facing is a 360-degree, three-dimensional issue that has to be addressed from multiple angles at the same time. And knowledge wins the day. It's very important that we understand the events of the past where food was a problem, but somebody transformed them into an opportunity. We can even see how people rebel against forces that were trying to impose of them, like the Nobel Peace Prize, Gandhi, when he did the march to Dundee, and where he was very much fighting against the English oppression by teaching fellow Indians to make salt, so they will not buy salt and therefore pay taxes indirectly to the British Empire. I think it's very important that we know about physics and understand the power of knowledge. Today I have a greenhouse that produces a lot of salads inside my house. It's a beautiful tower that I believe is the future. At the same time, I have a garden outside my house with great compost and great dirt. But the truth is that as much effort I try to put in producing the same quantity of food in the open farm with dirt, my wife, with her indoor garden, indoor salad bar, which is an amazing tower, always produces faster, quicker, as tasty, and without any bugs, deer, or a squirrel eating it. Therefore, it's important that we understand about fertilizers and about the things that enrich the water or the dirt that makes produced food quicker, faster, safer for everybody involved. Science plays a very big role. We must do more where that science is not only in the power of the few big companies, but is a knowledge that is shared by everybody. I don't have a problem with big companies doing well, but anybody ever imagined that September 11 was going to happen? No. Anybody ever imagined, besides Bill Gates, that COVID-19 will stop planet Earth, humans, for the last 7 months? No. I want to make sure that we diversify the food production so one day we don't have a big cataclysm where all of a sudden a pest or an unforeseen circumstance, a fungus, wipes out the rice, corn, wheat, soy production of the world. And all of a sudden, planet Earth will be hungry a year from now. Diversifying knowledge, science is very important. Politics, I've never seen the power of policy more important than now. So if we understand many stories and we understand bad decisions of the past, how they affect the present, we can make good policy today that becomes good politics. A group of cooks like me, we've been in Congress asking Congress to pass a bill to make sure that we keep the hungry fed, and at the same time we put restaurants working, paying the cooks, paying the rent, paying the farmers. You see, all of the sudden you bring everything. Is national security, is history, is a science, is policy, is pop culture. I created a class at George Washington for the last 7 years where you guys, you've been participating, where we've been teaching food in the middle and everything around, and trying to show everybody that everything is interconnected. If we have knowledge and we have power, we will be able not only to feed planet Earth by the year 2050, that we will be 9 billion people, but we will be able to do it not with pity, but with dignity, where food will never again be the problem, but food forever will be the solution. Science, very much, it's at the heart of achieving that goal.
So, Jose, I can't help but let the scientist in me ask you something. I don't know if you're still able to do it, but if you are, I want to do it before it gets too late. Are you able to do your demonstration?
I can do anything, even if I am in a very strange situation.
So you were telling us about heat transfer. Can you do something about that?
So heat transfer, yeah, and specifically when we talk about proteins, right? And what a better example probably than proteins and understanding the effects that heat has in the proteins when we talk about these very complex molecules that we know that in the moment the molecules unfold and we put too much heat, we desnaturalize the proteins themselves, and then whatever we are cooking is no good anymore. I compare heat, cooking, and proteins very much like humans, like you and me. We all love to go into the jacuzzi, right? And we like the jacuzzi at a certain temperature, right? We like 60, 65, 70 degrees. We like a temperature we are highly comfortable, right? Well, meats are not any different. We know that it's a happy temperature between 50 and 75 degrees Celsius. That is where proteins behave at this best moment. But this is not so specific about temperatures. This more was about this pandemic has made cooks like me go a little bit crazy. And we've been spending so many hours in the kitchen that I began thinking, well, how can we do things different, quicker, faster? Especially for students that were stranded in their dorms and they only had but a microwave. And quite frankly, I began putting a lot of things in the microwave. And the thing I began putting in the microwave is the easiest thing to put in the microwave, which is the protein that probably behaves the best in a microwave, which is eggs. And with all the complex proteins that an egg can have, which are too many and too complex to talk about, what I was trying to say is when I put an egg in the microwave, the way it cooks is unbelievably even. The heat transfer is unbelievably even. All that vibration that the water molecules happen, the water molecules happen, they don't happen all at the same time. It's almost like when you put music in a party, but not everybody starts dancing at the same time. Some people are happy and are dancing. That's the molecule that is vibrating, and it's kind of, because the vibration heat starts, no any different than you shaking your hands. You understand that? But then you have other molecules that, while the other ones are kind of getting hot, are super cold and are not moving. This is the worst when you are cooking, because you want cooking that happens at the same time almost across. Okay, I sound a little bit crazy? Yes. So that's the moment I did that. I got an egg, ayúdame, and I crack it in a bowl like this. Boom. Okay, we're gonna do 2 eggs. But then every time I put the eggs like this in the microwave, what happened? Terrible. The egg white will be overcooked. The egg yolk, I like it runny, but will be still raw with parts of the egg white uncooked. Not pleasant, not pleasant. The temperature diffusion, all the temperature around the egg was different in different parts. I needed something like will help, even if anything, achieve a better cooking. And so I had a lot of mayo. And what I did was put mayo, like 1 spoon per egg. And because I'm with you, I'm gonna put a little bit more. And then I whisk it. And I whisk it. And what I'm doing, I'm adding fat, right? But also I'm adding air. And I'm adding a little bit more of protein. Perfect. And we're gonna make it almost like it becomes Anglaise sauce. And imagine here, you can do whatever you want in terms of other ingredients, okay? Keep mixing, keep mixing. So here I got the Pyrex. And because we want the heat transfer to be slow and done well, I began doing them in glass that was very thin, but didn't work very well. It worked very well in the Pyrex that has a very thick glass that, believe it or not, has a lot of power to control the waves of the microwave. I'm talking empirically. I'm not talking by I know why. I am only done it so many times that I know in thick glass behaves 10 times better. Here I put some oil in the bottom and I put some Manchego cheese. Why? Because it's the first time I did it. I thought I don't want it to stick to the glass. Well, you don't even need to do that. It's not gonna stick. And now we put this in this Pyrex and we're gonna put it at maximum temperature in the microwave. The good learning about microwaves though is that we think in terms of the microwave is only one force. Now, these days, microwave has multiple possibilities of how much of the waves go inside the microwaves. So it's a lower wave kind of transmission or a higher wave transmission. We're gonna put it at the highest wave transmission. And what's gonna happen? That the egg is gonna cook very evenly, so evenly that what is gonna happen is that at the end, as you cook it more or less, depends your preferences, the egg cooks from the outside inside, and at the most you're gonna have a little heart that is gonna be running. This is what I call the best egg omelette ever. Actually, I will say is between an egg omelette and a souffle. It's in between. Let's hope I don't lose Wi-Fi. Let's hope I don't lose Wi-Fi because I'm changing positions. We go into the oven, and 1 minute maximum. This will be 1,000 watts, I think is the term, but you see we can have 90, 180. What are you doing? Well, I stopped touching. Hostia, everybody's touching today. So take a look at the eggs inside and take a look how very quickly at the maximum temperature, they are gonna start cooking fairly evenly and they are gonna start rising. The amazing thing here, which is very important, and Dave, Pia, Michael, you need to weigh in here. I would love to get Harmony, is that in this moment, the egg transform unbelievable texture perception in your tongue in a way I've never seen it before. Any question? You see, keeps cooking.
That's amazing.
Keeps cooking. Keeps cooking. And what this extra fat helps the protein by almost uncovering the protein and allows the cooking to be so much more perfect. In this moment, the minute and 10 seconds has passed. Take a look how it goes down and take a look at the middle. Take a look at the middle. It's slightly running in the middle. You can control it. And what is fascinating, and this is almost like if we were doing Alaska, the Alaska omelette, that the egg whites protect the transfer of the heat. I don't know what it is, but the oil, the extra oil we are adding with the fat, the extra egg yolks that concentrate, at the end achieves this texture that is to die for. Take a look how it separates from, you see how it separates? It separates. And now, right here, right now, I'm gonna do the flip, like a Spanish omelette, and take a look. This is fascinating. Now we're gonna put some grated cheese and some black pepper and some olive oil. And if you have truffles, if you have truffles you do. If you have black pepper, black pepper. If you like anchovies, anchovies. At the end, I want you to study this. Michael, this texture is like no texture I've seen on eggs. I love it. I think it is my favorite new way of eating eggs. They beat the scrambled eggs 10 times over, I'm sorry to say. Let's face it, people, scrambled eggs are eggs for people who don't know how to make an omelette, period. If anybody tells you the contrary, they're lying to you. All the chefs that tell you I'm very good at the scrambled eggs means that they don't know how to make an omelette. And that's the truth. And please don't tell any chefs. I don't want them to get upset with me. But this is something like you will be successful 99.9% of the time. And in cooking, like in a science, we know that success doesn't happen every day. But if you are a non-professional chef, if you are able to be 99% systematically perfect, that's a big achievement. Do this recipe, and believe me, the perception of your friends about your culinary arts will change exponentially. I am José Andrés, and I endorse this message.
Jose, that's great. A new recipe for us all. The students will love it. Theo, you had a question.
That's fantastic. Speaking about recipes and the ways in which you design new recipes. So one of the recipes you contributed to the book was the almond cake, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about how you go from reimagining one kind of recipe into that kind of totally new creative recipe?
Yeah, I think we have to be talking about the American Constitution to talk about creativity. I think more than anything, and what I learned from where I come from, is that we, the people, which I'm very lucky because my office looks over the National Archives, where that amazing document, very much of the beginning of America as we understand it, we, the people, wins the day. The question is, do you want to be your own creator and be I the person? Fine, do it. But when you believe in we the people, a country like America is created. Nothing is perfect, but you work towards a perfection by all keep going through years and years of making a better union, a better democracy. In cooking, like anything else in life, we are only as good as the people we have around us. My philosophy on that is I like to do a lot of things. If I like to do a lot of things because it's so much to know, this summer I bought a big telescope. I've been every single night, 4 hours a day, looking at Jupiter and the moon phases of Jupiter, of Saturn and Jupiter, non-stop. Life is about knowing, but life is about reaching other areas that enrich everything else you do. In cooking, I've been very lucky to be under Ferran, because Ferran Adrià, I was 16, 17 when I joined him. He was in a kitchen with only 3-4 people. He sounded a little bit nutty because the things he was talking about, they sounded like a little bit nutty. Putting gelatin in a hot oil to see what happens, you had to be nutty. That nuttiness of Ferran is what makes him so great. And Ferran understood that for him to be as creative as he could, obviously joining his brother Albert, who is also my brother and one of the biggest culinary minds anywhere in the world, Ferran understood better than most that working together and sharing that knowledge with others will make, in this case, Spain, a better culinary country. He was so right. If Ferran Adrià was a pharmacist, a pharmacy company, a pharmaceutical company, I guarantee you that today, many of the sickness in the world, they will be over by now, because he will find a remedy to all of them, and he will be sharing that information with everybody equally. That's what Ferran did, and that's the seed Ferran planted. That dish specifically because that philosophy of Ferran, I always, in my company, ThinkFoodGroup, I wanted to create a place that young and all minds alike could come, people working inside with me and people that sometimes will join from the outside. And these allow us to create so many more things. So people like Ruben Garcia, who you show a photo of him when he was very young, he came from El Bulli. Ferran sent him to me and he joined me. And he's been with me many years. Now he's moving into his own world and he's going to be opening his own venture, hopefully by the year 2021, 2022. And I hope I will be there cheering him on. People like Kaitor, people like Carlos that we see here, Tejedor, one of the best chefs in Spain, and a chef that had Michelin stars and at the same time open high volume places all at the same time. At the end of the day, that recipe that people should buy the book and understand the recipe as you see the recipe is a dish that obviously we did a mini bar. And many times I know that people say, why you have to do creative cooking? Why you have to do something with the tomato when the tomato alone, some olive oil is so good? I think people have a right to say that, but at the same time, anybody can do that. We don't do creative cooking like the one in the book. This is an homage to a traditional Spanish cold soup, ajo blanco, which it means white garlic, which is actually an almond soup, very traditional in the south of Spain in Malaga. Obviously, I know how to make that soup. It's a traditional dish. I want people to know the tradition of that dish, but a minibar is when, as I said before, we move away from our comfort zone. We try to change the behavior of the ingredients. We try to change the way we present them. What used to be an almond now becomes an ice cream. What used to be a liquid, because you make the soup into a liquid, now has the shape of a cake. All of a sudden, it's just not only challenging the perception, the eyes, the looks, the tongue, the heat, the cold, but at the same time, it's to the degree to make you think. Like everything and anything can be, whatever you dream, it can be. And we all have the power to really contribute to the world in many ways. Obviously, many people has always asked me, but Jose, it's great that now you're doing feeding the world and doing millions of meals around the world. This is so much more much more powerful for a human than doing your fancy cooking with strange names. And I have to tell them, actually, you are slightly wrong, because that creativity that I learned since I was a little boy, that creativity that I learned with Ferran Adrià, that working as a team that I try to do all my life, all that trying to reach excellence and trying to reach Michelin stars and having the best 12-seat restaurant in the world, all that effort is actually what prepares chefs like me to be able to do 40 million meals in the middle of a pandemic, keeping everybody safe. It's not a fight between science and religion. It's not a fight between creativity, modernity, and tradition. It's actually all together, creating a symphony, understanding that we need of everything and of each other to be successful. We, the people, eventually will always win the day, because we, the people, is what is going to keep moving all of us forward. That's the essence, the spirit of that dish. You want the recipe, which to me are boring, just
the
go
recipes of the book
and follow the recipe. Recipes chain us to the future. Recipes are only a moment to tell you, like a musical note, this is this, pling. But what is important is beyond the recipes, is if you really understood the recipe, if you are able to make it your own and even challenge that recipe. We should all challenge any dogma and find the answers on our own. That's the moment that we become holy. And this book, this amazing book, in more ways than you think, is not only going to be teaching you about physics and science in a very easy, fun way to understand very complicated concepts, but if you really read deep in the book, you're going to see some of those other hidden messages that I'm trying to share with you.
Thank you, Jose. So one last thing, and while I ask this and Jose answers, let me tell everybody who's listening that you can put questions and answers. We'll take them next in the question and answer bar at the bottom of your page. But Jose, we're talking about heat transfer, and you have this beautiful story about cooking paella with your father. Can you remind us about that?
Obviously, yeah. I think heat is such an amazing, because when we talk about heat, right, we don't even know. There still is so much to learn. When are we start cooking where heat is applied? What's the temperature that we all can agree is the beginning of cooking? But I'm going to go directly to the heart of the story, because in a way, when I was young, I learned that to make one dish, you needed to apply different heats in different moments. And where actually I needed to make sure that that heat was uniform across the dish in all its parts. That's to degree diffusion, and try to make sure that we control that complex way that heat moves through foods in a very uneven way. The dish I learned to cook when I was very young, through the hands of my father, that he was a nurse, was when on Sundays he will want to cook for his friends and family. And he'll never cook for 6 or 8. He had these big pots called paella pans, where usually traditionally we cook rice dishes. Okay? My father will put me in charge of making the fire. Making that fire, since I was very little, means I will have to go to the forest for some branches. We will bring maybe some charcoal, and I will make the fire. My father at the beginning needed a fire that was kind of medium. Then my father is one moment he will need the heat to go higher. In the moment the water was boiling with the chickens and with the rabbits, and the rice had to go in. The fire will have to be brutal. I will have to put grapevines to achieve this explosion of fire. The entire paella exploded. The rice was jumping in the air. But then is one moment that the fire had to go back medium and even under medium. In the moment the 15th minutes were reached, and I will have to move all the heat underneath the paella, all the charcoal, the ambers, the red hot ambers. One day I told my dad, I knew how to do that. I wanted to do not the fire, not the creation of the heat, but I wanted to do the cooking. I got so upset, my father sent me away. And then at that moment, I told at the end of the paella, obviously they did it without me. Remember, we, the people, everybody is very important, but the team will always be more important. My father got me on the side and told me, my son, I understand you wanted to do the cooking, to put the spoon in the paella pan, but actually you were in charge of the most important thing, and you were the only one that could do that besides me. Control the fire, understand the fire, distribute the fire evenly across is the most important thing any person can learn. Control your fire, find your fire, and then, only then, you will be able to do any cooking you want. As a young cook, I didn't realize at the time that obviously was a great message for a cook on the making like me. But at the end of the day, if you think about it, it's an amazing metaphor for life. Control your fire, and then you can do any cooking you want in the world. In my case, hopefully to change the world through the power of fire, through the power of food. I think together we can achieve that. That's what this heat transfer class is so important. It's beyond the physics that they are explaining to you. But actually, almost like if this was the Jedi Force, that heat is everywhere. And if we are able to control heat and give people of the world the control of that heat and that fire, again, we will move 3 billion people cooking from charcoal to cleaner technologies. In that moment, controlling that fire and that knowledge, we will end hunger and poverty. So imagine how fascinating heat transfer in physics is, because it reaches way beyond. This is all I have to say about that issue.
That's a beautiful story, and I think this is a perfect place to wrap up our official of us asking you questions. We do have just a few minutes for some questions from the audience. And in particular, I have some questions about the microwave demo. And there are two questions that are related. The first one is, several people have asked, how long did you cook them in the microwave? And then related to that is a question of, did you experiment with other things? How about just adding olive oil, since that is also fat like mayonnaise? Can you tell us something about your experimentation going on there?
Okay, I began just doing this a few weeks ago, and I was doing it with a couple of glasses of wine in my body. So it's not like I put, me personally, a lot of hours. But probably here, Michael and Dave and you, Pia, you can be adding some to this. The reason I didn't put only oil is because I've done it before. And oil itself, if I add it to the eggs, and I don't do it slowly, like if we were making a stable emulsion, as if we were making pure mayonnaise, right? This is something that very easily we can do, but it still ain't gonna be coming in the same way. So the reason I use add the eggs in one side and the mayo in the other, and then seeing that at the beginning, it looks like everything has all these kind of, it doesn't mix well, because at the beginning, the egg is very, the mayonnaise is, again, the mayonnaise is very sophisticated. And in the moment you try to mix it with raw eggs, the mayo is like telling you, hey, Jose, what are you doing to me? Don't you see I am the royalty mayonnaise? Why are you mixing me with a lowly egg white? So they get very upset one with each other. So you have to work them hard. At the end, they become a semi-emulsion, which technically is almost stable. I left it in the refrigerator and nothing separate. So it's almost like by adding more water, you'll remember, every time you add more water, you make the emulsion in a way, more often than not, very stable. Long story short, if I will only put oil, I know it doesn't work the same way, in no way or form. But when I mix it with the mayonnaise, remember, mayonnaise itself has a lot of air included. And that's a very important thing to remember. So I'm not only adding more oil with some egg, I'm also adding extra air that is more air than if I will be whisking the eggs myself with a fork. So, and the temperature, but again, it's a lot more we need to do on that. And obviously we can be doing it with so many other things. I've been doing it now, trying to do it with vegetable proteins, use powderized and with water, and then adding the mayonnaise. And I'm coming up with very interesting things, actually. But the temperature, this one is very sophisticated because it has very different powers of the microwave. The one I have at home only has one power, even has the different ones for fish, for meat, that equals different energy that goes inside the microwave. But the good thing is that it works very well at the maximum temperature. The time for 2x, I would say, depends every microwave, even if they tell you that that's the energy it releases. I know that every microwave never behaves the same. But still, I believe that microwave is something we should be taking more seriously, because I think it's so much more that we can be doing with microwave in the years to come that we are still not doing beyond heating water. The long story short is put it at maximum temperature. I will say it's anywhere between 50 seconds and 1 minute 10, 1 minute 20 seconds. But again, it's a lot of variables. Are the eggs cold? Are the eggs room temperature? Is the mayonnaise cold? Is the mayonnaise room temperature? Etc., etc. As we know, everything counts. And what's the final mix temperature that goes into the microwave is going to have a big effect that is going to vary between 10 and 30 seconds on the outcome of the egg. Are you with me? So it's a lot more to do with that.
Jose, we have always in our class, our students have a final project where they delve into the science of food a bit. And this is something we should recommend them to look at more carefully if they're interested. But there's another question here. You know, salt also changes the way eggs behave when they're cooking. And somebody's asking you, Jose Cepeda is asking you, why didn't you add salt to the eggs?
Actually, I think I did, but I was going so quickly that I didn't. Obviously, in the simplicity of doing over easy eggs on a flat top, even if I remember right, will be in a Harold McGee book that tells you very clearly, like if you are salt right in the edge where the egg white is in contact with the egg yolk, that even the egg white has a different, obviously, coagulation points, and that if you add the salt specifically where it meets egg white meets egg yolk, without having more details exactly of the why, Harold McGee always told us that we will achieve egg white that will cook more evenly, especially when you cook those eggs in the oven on top of a tomato sauce, for example. So I know that salt can change drastically the outcomes of any egg preparation, and more investigation should be done, including the type of salts we are using, that in more ways than one could also have a drastic change in the final product if we really do a random test with multiple different salts in different proportions to the egg. So obviously more to learn there, more things to do, more tests to do, more science that will help us very quickly really have the understanding of what's happening. But I'm telling you, I cook these eggs in the microwave, but I've been now doing also omelets with the same mix. And those omelets, while the texture is very different from the traditional omelet, actually you are coming up with some omelets that they have this kind of, again, texture between an egg omelet, a foam, and a souffle. And it's a very interesting texture that we need to be doing more work. Me, so far, I love it. I cannot wait to cook it for Jack Pepin, chefs of chefs, my good friend. This pandemic, I called Jack Pepin one morning, and he gave my daughters a class about how to make the perfect French omelette. I cannot wait to show these eggs to Jack Pepin, because if he blesses them from the culinary point, we're blessed. Now we need to make sure that scientifically we understand why I do believe eggs behave so well in the presence of this stable emulsion of more eggs and oil mixed with more eggs. The outcome to me, I think, is unbelievable. But we need to understand the more of the why it behaves in such a good way in the microwave.
Awesome, thank you, Jose. I think we're all waiting to hear that endorsement. I hope you'll keep us posted. So I think this is a good point to wrap up. I want to thank Jose one more time for joining us, and I want to thank everyone in the audience for hanging in there through our Zoom and Wi-Fi difficulties. Next week is Marieke van Beurden. She's going to talk about chocolate. So let's give Jose a hand, and good to see you all. Thanks, Jose.
Thank you, Jose.
Thank you, Pia. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Michael, my brothers, my sisters, all people of Harvard. We love you.